Welcome back, dear friends. We have been dealing with chapter 9 then in the fall of the Roman Empire in the Middle East and in Eastern Europe. We skipped chapter 10 because we already have dealt with it. That takes us forward to the kingdom. We come now to chapter 11, which deals with the holy city and with the two witnesses.
Oh, great.
The holy city, chapter 11.
Great.
It takes us back to the past, of course.
Yeah.
A voice said to me, "Go and measure the temple of God. The Gentiles will trample on the holy city for 42 months. Now, let's look at this. Go and measure the temple. There was no actual temple to measure at the time, as it had been destroyed by the Romans 26 years before the Revelation was written. What then is meant by the temple? And the Apostle Paul gives the answer. He tells the Christians, "You are the temple of the living God."
Wow.
Writing to the Corinthians. So the church is the temple now. The church was to be measured, to be taken stock of, to be weighed up. For what purpose? To prepare it for what lay ahead. And what lay ahead was, in many cases, persecution. The Gentiles will trample on the holy city for 42 months. That could not have been the city of Jerusalem. It was trampled on for 1852 years by the Gentiles, right up to the year 1967. In any case, the central theme of the book of Revelation is the Christian church on its way to the kingdom. The Jews are adequately dealt with in the Old Testament, and indeed in the first chapter of Acts as well, where Israel is mentioned. Revelation has no real reason to tell us either the past or the future of the Jews. It deals almost completely with the Christian church and everything that would surround the history of the church. Revelation does not deal with the history of Jerusalem. It does most certainly deal with the New Jerusalem, but that is still future in our day. So if the holy city does not refer to Jerusalem, what does it refer to? Again, the Apostle Paul gives the answer. The Jerusalem above is free and is the mother of all of us.
Wow.
He meant mother of all the Christians. The Jerusalem that is above, it exists now in the person of Jesus and his angels, and above all, of course, in the book of life, which he will bring down to Jerusalem to reshape the whole city. And we can be certain that every detail of the architecture of the New Jerusalem, the actual literal city, is kept in heaven. Therefore, the New Jerusalem is now in heaven, but it will come down.
Beautiful.
At the second coming. Mother of all Christians. He therefore identified the Christian church with the holy city. The church is called, so the New Jerusalem, as I say, is in heaven, but Jerusalem itself is now here now in the persons of the Christian church. Mm-hmm. It is called 4 names in Revelation, not just one but 4. It's called a woman, it's called the temple, it's called the holy city, and the witnesses. Now a woman is the bride of Christ. That's the title of the church. The temple, the church now carries out the functions which the temple of Solomon carried out. The holy city, the church, is the center of worship now, whereas the actual city of Jerusalem was the center of worship in the past, and it will be the center of worship for the whole world in the kingdom. The witnesses. Christians should be witnesses for the gospel all the time. So the two witnesses. Continue chapter 11. I shall send my 2 witnesses to prophesy for those 1260 days, wearing sackcloth. Fire can come from their mouths and consume their enemies. They are able to turn water into blood. and strike the whole world with any plague as often as they like. When they have completed their witnessing, the beast that is going to come out of the abyss is going to make war on them and overcome them and kill them. Their corpses will lie in the main street of the great city. Men out of every people, race, language and nation will stare at their corpses for 3.5 days, not letting them be buried. The people of the world will be glad about it and celebrate the event by giving presents to each other, because these two prophets have been a plague to the people of the world. Points to note: 2 witnesses, 2 groups of people who would witness for a cause. To prophesy, this can mean to teach as well as to foretell the future. The miraculous gifts died out in the generation after the apostles. That included the gift of foretelling the future, which is probably the normal meaning that people put into the word prophet.
Yeah.
The 2 prophets came long after this, so their prophesying meant just teaching. They will prophesy for 1260 days, that is 1260 years. They would be wearing sackcloth. They would have to endure hardship and suffering. So that then is the lot that was foretold for the Christian church, the true Christian church, for those 1260 years. Fire can come from their mouths, calls to war ordered by speeches. That's what is meant by the fire coming from their mouths. If anyone does try to harm them, he will certainly be killed. The witnesses were able to punish their enemies by the use of war. They are able to turn water into blood. Revelation 17:15 says, and we've already taken a look at this, but it's still no harm to remind ourselves what waters means. The waters you saw are all the peoples, the populations, the nations and the languages. So turning waters into blood means bringing blood to populations by the use of war. And it doesn't take war long to do that. When they are completed, they're witnessing the beast that comes out of the abyss is going to make war on them and overcome them and kill them. War can only be made against groups of people. It cannot be made against 2 individual people. The beast that comes out of the abyss, an abyss is a deep place. There is nothing deeper than the sea. A beast is an empire. The beast that comes out of the abyss is the beast of the sea, which is described 2 chapters later in chapter 13. It is actually the Catholic Church. At that time the popes were like emperors and had imperial power. Who were the 2 witnesses? There must have been 2 groups who by their words and by their actions witnessed for God over a period of 1260 years. We would expect that one group would be the true church, since that is the group which has God's main interest and the interest of his Son since the first coming of Jesus. The true church is the woman. The next chapter of the book of Revelation says, the earth helped the woman. So the woman is one witness and the earth is the other. The earth stands for the ordinary people. Over the 1260 years there must have been groups who arose more from the ordinary people than from governments. who helped the woman. How did the act help the woman? The woman would never take up the sword and fight in war, since no true Christian should ever fight in war. The act campaigned for freedom, and the freedom which they won benefited the true church.
Mm-hmm.
If the act had not campaigned for freedom, the true church might have been totally wiped out by its enemies and by tyrants. Sometimes there was no direct connection between the act and the woman. Sometimes there was a connection, and sometimes, in fact, the two groups were actually in the one society, as it were. The Waldenses and the Huguenots both took up the sword to fight against their enemies at certain stages, but both also contained the true church at certain stages. The only way this could be was there must have been a small group within both which made up the true church. These would have avoided all contact with war.
Wow.
Because Jesus, of course, said he who
Put down
used
the
the sword
Yeah.
will die by the sword. Sometimes Christians who
Wow,
are...
that's interesting, Neil.
Yes, yes, I think that because of course at this stage there's no way that we can know the details surrounding the group that was the true church and the wider group that was prepared to take up the sword. But the important thing is Jesus knows,
Yeah.
and it's written in his book of life.
Yeah.